You are locked on to the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Brice Paterik. Here today, we got a special episode. Connor Newcomb of Locked On Orioles talking all things bad baseball teams, what it means to be a rebuilding team, and what fans should look for and hope for in seasons that look filled with despair. On this episode of Locked On Rangers.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the Texas Rangers, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Rangers your first listen of the day. I am your host, Brice Paterik, joined today by a special guest, Connor Newcomb of Locked On Orioles. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Spotify Green Room. Download the app and join me next week on Sunday afternoon during the Rangers day game to get in on the action. Here we are, Connor Newcomb, the host extraordinaire, the hostess with the mostest, the guy who knows about hard baseball teams to watch. Connor, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, Brice. Thanks for having me on. We are definitely going to talk about bad baseball. I'm sure we'll talk about a bad series that's happening. And there have been some bad ones this year, but I'm kind of laughing just how late in the season these two teams are playing and realizing like me and you might be the only ones watching these games this weekend.
It's an entirely real possibility. I mean, the funniest thing that I find about the series when I saw it on the calendar, and I was listening to the Baseball Barbecue Boys podcast, and they're talking about how utterly futile is it Jake or Jordan that's an Orioles fan? I can't remember which.
Jake's an Orioles fan.
Okay, Jake's an Orioles fan, and you're talking about how bad the Orioles were at home, and I didn't really realize how bad they were at home. I knew the Rangers were awful on the road. They had a really just horrific streak right before Joey Gallo left, a losing streak on the road that continued onto home. They set I think it was 17 games on the road, or no, I think it was 16 straight road games that they lost, which is the franchise record. And then they kept losing when they went home right before the trade deadline. And Joey Gallo, in his last game, hit a 3-run home run to give the Rangers a win to end that horrible streak, made a very tearful goodbye, which at the time we didn't know was a goodbye speech in the postgame on the field with Emily Jones. But yeah, this team on the road against a team that's bad at home, we're in for some real bad baseball. And I'm a sicko because I'm kind of excited.
It could be watchable. There are reasons to watch. I'm sure we'll talk about it. Like, it's not like they've got a bunch of, journeyman 35-year-old pitchers going. Like, the pitchers starting in the series are kind of important to both teams in the future. So that's kind of good. If anyone needs like a break from meaningful baseball, maybe they can just like slip in for an inning to Orioles Rangers. Maybe like those tense fans of teams that are, fans of the Yankees, Blue Jays, Red Sox, like hanging on to every inning of the wild card race. They just want to like take a break, Saturday afternoon. They need an inning to just slow down the heart rate. They tune in for the fifth inning of Orioles Rangers, then they get right back to it. That could be what this series is for.
Honestly, I think that's like a really good pitch for this series. I mean, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon, so as you're listening to this on Friday, the Thursday night game will have already happened. But yeah, like you were saying, these are some important pitchers, at least for the Rangers. I don't know how much importance there are to some of the Baltimore guys. Obviously, the Saturday matchup of Jordan Lyles versus John Means is going to be a little bit more important for the future of the Orioles than it is for the Rangers, since Jordan Lyles has been, let's say, a very good tanking starter, just good enough to get the innings, but also bad enough to give up some runs and save some of the younger arms from having to pitch too much. But there are some legitimate stars on this Orioles team, actual stars, no hint of irony whatsoever in John Means and Cedric Mullins. And I'm curious, I think we talked a little bit early in the season about Cedric Mullins, or at least I have talked about him intermittently throughout the season. Was he a guy who was on a lot of prospect radars and just came out of nowhere? Where did this guy come from? Because I don't feel like I heard too much about him before this season.
Yeah, so this was, in terms of, it's really interesting because I think in any other year, Cedric Mullins right now is he's not going to win MVP. We all know that. It's Shohei versus Vladdy. But Cedric's going to finish top 5 probably in AL MVP. Like, that is ridiculous to think about. And like in any other year, he's the shoe-in for probably most improved player. But that award was given to Trey Mancini probably the day he stepped back on the field on opening day. But I will say, like, Cedric Mullins, he came up at the end of 2018. He was a former 13th round pick, so not a super high draft pick out of college. At the end of 2018, they kind of called him up. It was Adam Jones's last month with the Orioles. And they called up Mullins, and they actually put Mullins in center field and moved Jones over to right field for the first time in his career. It was kind of like a symbolic passing of the torch. Jones had been the Orioles center fielder for a decade. His contract was ending, and it was Mullins' time. And he hit okay the end of that season. We said, okay, going into 2019, here we go. He's the opening day center fielder. It's time. Cedric Mullins had one of the worst month-and-a-half stretches you'll ever see from a hitter. They sent him down to AAA in 2019 in, I believe, May-ish. He never came back to the big leagues. He actually ended that season in AA. That's how bad it got for Cedric Mullins. He went from the majors to AA. The Orioles AA team that year was in the playoffs. He was their leadoff hitter in the playoffs at the end of the year. That's how bad it had gotten for Cedric Mullins. 2020 comes around. He's awful again to start the season. He goes back to the alternate site, comes back at the end of the year, was a little better. And so we come into 2021 like, all right, Mullins did enough at the end of 2020 to be on the major league roster to start the season. And kind of the thought was he's probably the Orioles' 4th outfielder coming into the year. Like, they thought Austin Hayes would be in center, and they'd have, Anthony Santander out there in the outfield, and Ryan Mountcastle would play the outfield, and you'd have Mullins to be the speedy, good defender guy, who would hit some games. And then Mullins just said, I'm done switch hitting. He was like, I'm not hitting right-handed anymore. I am only hitting left-handed, which has always been his better side of the plate. And everyone was like, is he going to be able to hit lefties from the left side? And then for the first 3 months of the season, he had the most hits off of lefties of any player in baseball. He just dropped switch hitting. He didn't make that many more swing changes besides just dropping switch hitting, and he became an MVP candidate. Like, it shouldn't be that simple, and it probably wasn't, but here we are. And now you go from, can Cedric Mullins make the team this year? Can he be a starting outfielder? To, when are the Orioles extending Cedric Mullins? Like, that's where we got to in the terms of one season.
Yeah, that is an incredible development. I mean, he's 26 years old. He's got he's hitting over 300, slugging over 500, OPS of 904 at this point. And he's one home run away from the 30-30 club as a 26-year-old, his first real full season in the big leagues. And that is, that's really exciting. And there's some exciting players on this team. I mean, Trey Mancini is, what an awesome story for him to just come back and be healthy, not only beat cancer, but come back and be a productive major league player at first base. That is encouraging as well. Ryan Mountcastle, 24-year-old DH, has been mashing quite a bit, 30 home runs, tied for the rookie lead at this point. One of them could have hit another home run in the Thursday night game. Entirely possible with the pitching staffs both these teams are trotting out. But what is Ryan? Hold on. No. We're gonna take a quick break before. I don't want to get people too worked up. Orioles fans, too much to hope for. We got to space out this hope. Talking about how great Cedric Mullins has been. We're gonna get into a little bit of Ryan Mountcastle and that Rookie of the Year race coming up right after this word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by NetSuite. Slow is just right if you're on vacation, a sloth, or describing QuickBooks, or also, I guess, this series as well. It's probably going to be a little bit slow, but more like slow books. It sucks you in, slows you down with manual processes, integration difficulties, and glitchy delays that leave you scrambling for the numbers you need. Now is the time to make the switch to NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 financial system, because NetSuite gives you visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, e-commerce, and more. It's everything you need to grow in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes, close your books in no time, no matter how big your business grows. Failing to switch to NetSuite will leave you stuck trying to make sense of your books while your competitors sprint ahead. 93% of surveyed businesses increased their visibility and control since switching to NetSuite. And right now, special financing is back. NetSuite is offering one-of-a-kind financing program only for those who are ready to switch today. Head to netsuite.com/lockedon right now. Get special financing at netsuite.com/lockedon. netsuite.com/lockedon. Today's episode is also brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar is amazing. They are fantastic. They just sent me a new box of Built Bars, which, I'm so thankful of. I missed the last shipment, and so I have been jonesing for my Built Bar hit. Ryan or Connor, gosh, I had Ryan Mountcastle on the mind. I'm sure Ryan Mountcastle has a different favorite Built Bar than you. Connor, what's your favorite Built Bar?
I mean, it just feels like the German chocolate or the double chocolate, just anything like when it's chocolate and then there's other chocolate is there, but peanut butter brownie comes in there as well in terms of flavors they've had, but it's anything chocolatey, peanut buttery, it's taking it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Reese's guy, and that chocolate peanut butter combo, it's just elite. There's nothing like it. And I feel bad like eating them sometimes. I'm like, oh my gosh, this just tastes too good. But then I remember they're healthy for you as well. They got 17, 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, only 4 to 5 grams of sugar, only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs, amazing flavors. All of them are tasty, all of them are healthy. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15. You'll get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Now let's get into this Rookie of the Year race. One of these guys is more of a traditional rookie in Ryan Mountcastle, who is 24 years old. And then there is also the Rangers Rookie of the Year candidate in Ellis Garcia, a guy who is a bit older, 28 years old, is a bit old for a rookie, but he is still rookie, so he still counts. Shohei Ohtani, I believe, did he win Rookie of the Year when he first came over? And he was, 23? I got to go look this up because this is going to bother me. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this Rookie of the Year race. Do you think Ryan Mountcastle was going to be in it from the start, or is him being in there a bit of a surprise to you?
Yeah, this was actually for my listeners on Locked On Orioles. This was kind of the premise of my Wednesday episode this week. Was what is Mountcastle's case for AL Rookie of the Year, because he's a definite top five candidate, probably a top 3 candidate right now. And actually, when we did, Brice, our bold predictions at the beginning of the year, I know we each had to do one bold prediction for our team here on the network. And I said Ryan Mountcastle will win AL Rookie of the Year. That was my bold prediction. And we're getting kind of close to that. But what I came away with on my episode Wednesday was that my whole point of the episode was Ryan Mountcastle is probably not going to win the award, and why that was okay. He still had a great season, and he's still a great part of the future for the Orioles. But you kind of look at it, and I think Garcia and Arozarena both have better cases. And I honestly think, and this is going to make both sets of our listeners upset, I actually think our 2 favorite players in terms of this Rookie of the Year race are going to finish second and third, because Mountcastle's been great with the bat, but he brings no value defensively. Garcia is fantastic defensively. He was great with the bat in the first half, but we know the offense has not exactly been the same in the second half.
Oh, by the way, while we're talking about great offense or great defense of my guy Adolis Garcia, did you see the throw that he uncorked in that finale? Literally,
fantastic.
it broke my mind. Like, the guy was on third base. In case you didn't see it, literally, go find this clip. He has made some amazing plays. He has reached over the wall and robbed 3-run home runs. He's made great diving plays. His arm has been incredible. But this one, he catched the ball in medium deep, right field, about where he's normally positioned. There's a guy on third base. I can't even remember who it was. I think it was DJ LeMahieu. But nobody that's Albert Pujols slow. And they're just tagging up. There's one out in the inning. They're tagging up on a sac fly from third base, and you think, okay, there's probably no chance he gets it. This ball is just too deep. And he guns it. Perfect strike to the catcher. Beats him by a second and a half. Jose Trevino is just sitting there with the ball at the plate and just runs into him. And the guy who's running is just stunned. How did he get this baseball there that far in that amount of time? The guy's got a cannon for an arm.
Yeah, that's kind of the moment they can win you an award. But that was kind of my point on this is Randy Arozarena has been the more kind of steady presence, and he's not great defensively either in the outfield. He's not as bad as Mountcastle is defensively, but he's been kind of the steady presence with the bat all year. And we talked about this a little bit off air, Brice, and I don't know your thoughts on this, but it stinks that this is the reality, but all these 3 candidates have a solid resume for the award. I don't think there's any runaway winner right now. I think these are the 3 top guys, Garcia, Mountcastle, and Arozarena. And I literally think because everyone knows Randy Arozarena well, because he lit the postseason on fire in 2020, none of that counts, but it's in the back of the mind of every voter. And they say, looking at the stats, these 3 guys are pretty close. Let's give it to the guy who just tore up the postseason, had the greatest playoff run of all time. And unfortunately, I kind of think that narrative, I don't like awards based on narratives anyway, but this might be an award based on narrative from last season, which is somehow even worse. But unfortunately,
and also
I don't think Mountcastle's
postseason
winning.
for a regular season award. Last year's postseason for regular season award. By the way, I did look up. Shohei Ohtani did win Rookie of the Year. You know how old he was when he was a rookie, which feels like forever ago?
24?
23. He was 23 when he came into the league. This is his age 26 season. He turned 27 midway through the season. He's still young. Like that's absolutely insane. By the way, we have Rookie of the Year odds from betonline.ag. At this point, Randy Arozarena is 1-2 the favorite. I don't really know how odds or math works, so I'm not the best one with these. Adolis Garcia is 11-4 odds. Ryan Mountcastle is 11-2. Wander Franco 10-1, and Luis Garcia is 12-1. Be honest, do you know who Luis Garcia is? Because I cannot say that I do.
Right-handed starting pitcher for the Houston Astros.
Oh,
had
that
a really
Luis
good
Garcia. I didn't
had a
think
really
that he
good
was a
beginning to
rookie.
the year, and then he's turned into more of just kind of an average starting pitcher since then, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to read off a little bit of what Randy Arozarena has done. Randy Arozarena is also a little bit older for a rookie. He's 26 years old, and he's had like different stints in the big leagues. Which, granted, so is Adolis Garcia. Adolis played, I think, like 3 games last year with the Rangers, and then something in the neighborhood of 12 games with the Cardinals the year before. Arozarena through 133 games this year, just over 500 at bats, literally 501. Has 19 home runs, on base of 350, slugging 457. So it's an 807 OPS. WAR wise, he is, oh my gosh, this is scrolling through all of this nonsense. Okay, let's see. Offensive, defensive WAR.
He was 2.5 on Fangraphs as of Wednesday.
Okay, he's at 3.6 as of Baseball Reference right now. Not Arozarena. Adolis Garcia, his WAR is at 3.4. So that's a lot closer than I thought. Because I thought Baseball Reference really preferred Adolis Garcia, but yeah, Adolis has really fallen off. His on base is at 288 right now, which is not great. It's just not great. And the defense is there. Like, he's got enough to be like a solid, above average, maybe average starter. But this team has been so bad offensively that, like, even as his numbers keep declining, like, he's still a huge impact bat for this team, because the offense on the Rangers has just been paltry lately.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the other thing to take into account, with me thinking Arozarena is winning, is the other unfortunate part of voting for awards. We're here talking about 2 bad teams. You know what Arozarena's on? Not a bad team. He's on a team that just clinched a playoff spot and is about to clinch the AL East and just went to the World Series last year and has a really good chance of getting there again. So that gives him another bump. And we just kind of sit back here and hope the voters are smart enough, because Fangraphs actually does have Garcia top WAR among AL rookies, and they really value his defense like a lot. And their WAR does a great job to evaluate defense. But I did kind of want to ask you, because for Mountcastle, you mentioned he's 24, and like, he is clearly, obviously, a middle of the order bat for the Orioles for years moving forward. But I wanted to ask about Garcia, because again, the on-base percentage has been like Ryan Mountcastle's on-base percentage, I believe he's like just above 300 is considered like not what you want.
He's
and I know
312.
Yeah, 312. And I know Garcia is like well under 300, I believe.
Yeah, 288.
Yeah, and so my question about him was, being 28, having bounced around for a while, having this really good season, but he has gone through some slumps this year. He was one of the best hitters in the league for the beginning of the season, hitting a home run every other night, it seemed like. My question is, like, when you're a rebuilding team and you have a 28-year-old who's breaking out, where does he fall in to the plans? Because even Cedric Mullins is still 26 and was an Orioles prospect, so they've always had him in their system. Garcia's 28 and just joined the Rangers. So it's like, where does he kind of fall in? Like, when do the talks start? Like, do we extend Garcia, or like, is this just like flash in the pan? Like, where does this kind of fall into the rebuild? Because it's a really interesting piece of a rebuilding team that most people don't talk about. They want to talk about, the young players at the majors or the top prospects in the minors, not the older guys who are breaking out.
That's a really good question. And I'm just going to tease everybody. I'm going to answer that. I got a really great answer to that. But first, this word from betonline.ag. We just talked about all their stats for who's going to win AL Rookie of the Year. You can go make your bets on that if you think they're disrespecting Ryan Mountcastle or they're disrespecting Adolis Garcia. With those odds we said, feel free to take advantage of those, make a bet. We're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron. Besides our eyes, they're on bad baseball teams, and they will be. We always have a soft spot in our heart for all kinds of different baseball teams. And, teams are back to start their football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this year. They got an updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests. Go ahead to the website on your mobile device. Sign up today. Receive your 100% welcome bonus. That is double your initial deposit just for signing up. Don't forget to use that promo code NFL100. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. Be sure to use that promo code LOCKEDON. This episode is also brought to you by DirecTV Stream. Does this sound familiar? You got that one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone. You've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before. So you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. The best part? There's no annual contract. So get rid of that clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. Now, we were talking about what the Rangers' long-term plans are with Adolis Garcia. And that's a really good question because it's so weird to have a 28-year-old that's breaking out. Like, these are the things that are important to rebuilding teams that are hard to answer questions for the GMs. And these are the things that these GMs are thinking about. It's not always like, okay, who's this prospect, how he's going to do whatever. Like, that's why these GMs get paid the big bucks, because they've got to figure out these bridges from rebuilding to young, feisty, starting to compete team to actually good competitive team. And the question of Adolis Garcia is, is he going to be around when the Rangers are starting to compete again? Now, only just this year did President of Baseball Ops John Daniels and GM Chris Young start saying the word rebuild. Like, it's such a dirty word. Even teams that are like have been losing for years are like, no, I don't know about rebuilding. And it's like, you got the number 2 overall pick last year. Like, you weren't good the year before. It's about time to say it. But I think Adolis is going to be there when this team is trying to compete next. They've said 2023 is when they want to start competing again, which that feels aggressive. Like, a rebuild takes time. And if you try and, halfway it means you're going to extend it more than twice as long, because then you got to go through and rebuild again and sell off if you do end up getting any guys who are stars in that time where you're, mediocre and thinking that you're about to be good. You got to sell off those guys. So Adolis is a good stopgap for the next 2-3 years, I think. There's not any outfield prospect whose time he's taking away, whose at bats he's going to be taking away. I think he's the starter in right field next year and maybe even in 2023. There's not a whole lot of big outfield guys on the market. There is some. I hesitate to even say this, but Levi Weaver of The Athletic, friend of the podcast, who I got to apologize and then not apologize for doing this on my podcast, wrote an article about what the Rangers starting lineup is going to look like in 2023. And he put Joey Gallo in there in right field, which is hurtful to even consider that and have that almost assuredly not happen. And then this week, Joey Gallo came out of the dugout for his first media availability before this series on Monday and looked like he had been crying and talked about how emotional it's been, like seeing this team and coming back. And Chris Woodward, Rangers manager, is saying such nice things about him. But all of this 18-minute diatribe to say, I think Adolis Garcia is going to be a really good stopgap for the next 2 years in right field, maybe some center field, because there's nobody there in the Rangers organization at the upper levels that's going to, push him out. That requires a lot of at-bats and a lot of attention there. So he's going to be around for a little bit.
Yeah, the stopgaps are important. Like, the Orioles have found a couple of those guys, like Ramon Arias an infielder who's been like a really impressive stopgap. Everybody talks about Mountcastle on the Orioles. Ramon Arias, who was also a rookie this year, actually same Fangraphs WAR as Ryan Mountcastle this season in terms of rookies. So like good stopgap right there. But I did want to I know this series, how many people really care about this series? Probably not. But we did kind of mention at the beginning that most of the starting pitchers are like somewhat relevant for these two teams moving forward that are pitching in this series. So we'll include the Thursday game, even though it'll already happen by the time people listen to this. But I wanted to kind of like quickly, if you're cool with this, go back and forth. We'll go every game Thursday through Sunday and just a quick little decision. Is the starting pitcher who's starting for your team just a 2021 guy, a maybe future guy, or a definite future guy in terms of the pitching staff for each team? I think it'd be a nice little exercise to.
I also want to give props to Taylor Hearn, because I haven't talked about this yet. Taylor Hearn, who had a pretty solid outing against the Yankees. He's had a little bit of a problem of, once he's towards the end of his start, like the last inning that he's out there, he usually can't finish it. But for the first few innings, I think he had 5 shutout innings of the Yankees, which is
pretty
a
good.
solid thing after a rough outing in his last start. But yeah, let's go. I like that idea.
Yeah, and Hearn's another guy. He's got some like interesting stuff from the left side. I know he hasn't had like dominant starts this year, but he's also been kind of reliable just to kind of get you through games, it feels like, which is like also important. Like you need that on bad teams, especially.
You need a lot of those, and it's hard to get those guys. And he needs a very positive development.
Yeah, start with the Thursday game. As you're listening to this, it already happened, and maybe these two guys got blown up, or maybe they had dueling no-hitters heading into the 8th inning. I would guess that the first option is a little more possible, but for the Rangers, Glenn Otto. I know he came over from the Yankees in the Gallo trade. Where do you see him? Is he just a this year guy, a maybe future, or a definite future guy?
He's definitely got a future with the Rangers. I mean, they've got a lot of control of him. He is a Texas guy, which, I like. He's a good kid. He went to Rice. He said he grew up being an Astros fan, and he's like, I have clearly rejected that fandom now as a Ranger. So brownie points for that. Real easy brownie points, but still. I think eventually he's probably a long man. He's not had the greatest last couple of starts. His first start was great. The next couple have been a little more challenging. I think he's most likely of this like kind of guys who are in the rotation for like the 5th spot in him, Colby Allard, and AJ Alexy. Next year, I think he's one of the more likely ones to get that spot, and also might be, split spot starting, like, piggyback starting with Spencer Howard, because he's not going very many innings right now, or next year probably.
Yeah, for the Orioles, it'll be Zach Lowther in the Thursday game. Young left-hander, made his debut this year. Orioles draft pick, 2017, 3rd rounder. Kind of a soft-tossing lefty, and he's been one of those guys who, didn't walk anybody throughout the minors. And it was like, how's he getting guys out? He's throwing 90 miles an hour, but he just hit the corners all day and just didn't walk anyone. That is not translated to the majors just yet. You'll probably see that when you look up his ERA, which is almost 10.
That's not great.
Not a huge sample size. It's around 20 innings, but it's he hasn't pulled it together. And again, it's a very small sample size, but in terms of the stuff and in terms of the guys' stuff that are behind him in the system, the guys in like AA and AAA right now, his best bet is maybe a number 5 starter moving forward. But I kind of put him in the maybe future piece category because the Orioles like him and drafted him highly, but it wasn't this regime that drafted him. And he just gets hit so hard sometimes, and he has to be perfect to be good. And he was perfect a lot in the minors. If he hits those corners, he's got a good curveball he really likes. His fastball has some run to it, gets some ground balls. Like, he's a really frustrating pitcher. Like, you're like, oh, we'll crush this guy. And then you hit 14 ground balls to second base, and everybody in the dugout wants to break their bats. But when he's not on the corners, that's where the 10 ERA comes in. And I will definitely put him in the maybe category. But what about Spencer Howard? He's the Friday starter for Texas, another trade deadline this year guy.
Yeah, Spencer Howard is a guy who had a lot of promise. I didn't hear much about him as a prospect, but he was a top 100 guy in pretty much all the places. The Phillies' top prospect for quite a while, had some difficulty. He was a reliever in college, made the transition towards the end of his college career to being a starter. Has 4 pretty good pitches. His fastball is solid. Relied on that a bit too much, I think, with Philadelphia. They couldn't figure out if he was a starter or reliever. And so when push came to shove, he wasn't quite ready to be a starter in a pennant chase. And, that was the best deal I think the Rangers are going to get for those 2 guys who were really solid this year. But he's going usually 2 to 3 innings. He's relying a little bit too much on his fastball, and I think that might mean that there's some lingering injury or something that's going on there. The pitch development needs like a little bit of work, but he's got some good off-speed stuff. Several like 3 quality non-fastball pitches and a changeup, a curveball, and a slider. But he just needs to work on being stretched out, keeping that velocity, and maybe that pitch selection needs a little bit of work as well. But I think he's probably got the highest upside of any of these guys the Rangers have in their starting rotation right now.
Yeah, the Orioles, it's another young lefty who's always been an Oriole. Alexander Wells, 24-year-old. They actually was not a draft pick. They signed him out of Australia, which is not a path that you see a lot of guys take and get to the majors. Kind of, I want to say, was Grant Balfour Australian from the Athletics or Liam Hendricks?
Liam Hendricks.
Yeah, Liam Hendricks is like the most famous one right now. But Wells is kind of like Lowther, and I put him in that maybe future category, but I think he has a much higher upside than Lowther. He has the same kind of stuff where he throws like 91 with his fastball. But what Wells has done, and which is why he's had more success in the majors this year than Lowther has, is like Lowther doesn't like to use his fastball to put guys away, whereas Wells is like, I will strike you out with 90 miles an hour because I will throw a bunch of changeups and curveballs, and then when I throw a high fastball at 91, it looks like 99. And he's not afraid to go at guys. He's got this big loopy curveball that he like has so like unbelievable command of. Like he can drop it into the strike zone whenever he wants, which is pretty impressive. And he's got this high fastball, and his numbers are elevated because he has to face the Yankees and Red Sox a lot. Big, powerful right-handed lineups against a young lefty.
Also the Rays, and literally everybody else in that division is like just deadly lineups. Like that's got to be rough.
It's a bad division for young left-handed starters because there's a million fantastic, big, powerful right-handed hitters, and there needs to be a stat for that, like the AL East something coefficient or something like that that switches your ERA when you're a left-handed young starter. But I like Wells. I think he has moxie, and I really do think he will be in the Orioles rotation next year and like to start the year, and we'll get a real good look at him. I think we can go really quickly on the Saturday matchup because this is the easiest answers for each of us. Jordan Lyles for the Rangers, I would assume, is just a 2021 guy.
Yeah, I think so. He was a guy they signed to a 2-year deal at the same time they signed Lance Lynn. They've had a lot of success on guys kind of like him that have shown some potential, that are a little bit older. It worked out with Lance Lynn, Mike Minor, and Spencer Howard. It did not work out with Jordan Lyles, but still a pretty good success rate on guys kind of like that, a multi-year deal. But he just hasn't quite lived up to it this year.
On the flip side, John Means, ace. Give the man the bag. Pay him this offseason. Give me John Means for many more years. So then we go to Sunday. And this is the guy who kind of interests me the most because he's been with the Rangers for the most time because he was an off-season trade guy in Dane Dunning. And I remember people being excited for him when he was in the rotation. And then did he go to the bullpen and now he's back? Like what's the deal with Dane Dunning?
So the deal with Dane Dunning is he did have a relief appearance. He spent a couple weeks on the COVID list. He missed 2019 to an arm injury. So they're limiting his innings. They haven't let him go quite as far. That's why his starts and innings pitch look a little wonky. Usually they'll pull him at about like 85-ish pitches, just trying to be sure that they're extra safe. COVID hit this team pretty hard a couple weeks back when they went to Boston. And so that's honestly why Glenn Otto and AJ Alexy were getting some extended looks. They also DFA'd Kohei Arihara. He's in AAA now. They thought it would be part of their plans. Doesn't quite have big league stuff. But Dunning is solid. The most sure bet of all these guys, probably going to be a number 3 starter. Might be, depending on if they sign somebody veteran who looks really good in spring training. At this point, he would be my pick for the Rangers' number 1 starter next year. So solid guy, big part of the plans going long term. Nothing too sexy, nothing too flashy, but like really solid and reliable. And that's hard to find in a time like this, especially for the Rangers, who have not done well developing pitchers in the past.
Yeah, and for the Orioles on Sunday, I know they haven't officially named a starter, but it's probably going to be Chris Ellis. They skipped his last start, which was supposed to be Tuesday because of some arm soreness, arm fatigue, but he'll probably go Sunday. 28-year-old right-hander came up with the Rays this year. Then they DFA'd him. Orioles claimed him like you should claim every single Rays pitcher that they DFA. It's a good plan, trust me. And he's been good. Like, so he basically goes between 4 and 5 innings in every start. You will not, I guarantee you, he will not pitch into the 6th inning, but I can almost guarantee you he will make it through 4 innings. So he either comes out in the 5th or he finishes the 5th. That's his start. He'll give up 1 or 2 runs. He'll strike out 3 or 4 guys. He'll walk 1 or 2. And it's not amazing stuff, but it's like, compared to what the Orioles have gotten from some pitchers this year, just to have him know that, like, we can expect 5 innings, 2 runs from Chris Ellis every time. That's the lowest bar you can possibly think of, but it's like fantastic for Orioles fans to see that. And he's still technically a rookie, even though he's that old. It's kind of the Garcia thing where he's 28, but he's just now getting to the bigs. So, like, I don't think he's in the Orioles rotation plans because he hasn't been stretched out that much. But I do think come 2022, he will be in the Orioles bullpen, and we'll really get to see what his stuff is like when he's going 1 and 2 innings. And who knows, maybe he's kind of like a late bloomer guy, but that's I guess that's reasons, Brice, to kind of pay attention to this series, because there's still a lot of questions to be answered, at least among the starting pitchers this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I feel like we wouldn't be doing our due diligence in a Rangers-Orioles crossover. We didn't talk about, former Rangers that are now on the Orioles. It is Rangers East. I mean, not as much so as of late, but there's still a few names in there. Dylan Tate, a guy who, through no fault of his own, whenever I see his name, fills me with a white hot rage, because instead of getting Alex Bregman that year, the Rangers went on a winning streak in September for no stupid reason, with Tim Bogar as the interim manager after Ron Washington left, and they got Dylan Tate instead of Alex Bregman. There's also Marcus Dipon, who is a former Rangers prospect. How have those guys been doing this year, and are they in the future plans of the Orioles?
Yeah, Marcos Dipon, really interesting. 24 years old, came over in the minors, just Orioles got him. And, he was pitching in the AAA bullpen. He was pitching well. And the futures game comes along at All-Star Weekend. And of course, as everyone expected, Adley Rutschman, number 1 prospect in baseball, was in the futures game for the Orioles. And then they announced the Orioles have 2 players. And we were like, oh, could it be like Grayson Rodriguez, our top pitching prospect, or who could it be? It's Marcos Dipon. And everyone's like, what is going, like, who does he know? Like, who's he blackmailing to get into this game? And he pitches, and he didn't pitch that well in the futures game. And everyone's like, who is this guy? He's not even an Orioles top 30 prospect at this point. Then all of a sudden the Orioles call him up, right, in August. And he actually pitches well out of the bullpen. I believe his first 5 or 6 appearances were scoreless. He's gotten hit around a little bit since then, but he's still in the big league bullpen at this point. They kind of like him. He's only 24, and he's kind of figuring it out this year. In terms of Dylan Tate, he's interesting as well, because Tate has had stretches this year where he looks unhittable, throwing 98 on a sinker that moves like a foot with a good changeup and a good slider. He was the Orioles closer for a few weeks. You're like, how's anybody going to hit him? And then he throws these pitches like he did against the Phillies this week, and he's done a lot this year, where it's like a 96 mile per hour 2-seamer with movement, but he starts it on the outside corner and it runs right into the middle of the plate, and good hitters just smash it into the gap over and over again. So we're still trying to figure out what's going on with Tate. He'll be back with the Orioles. Dipon will be back with the Orioles. They'll both be in the Oriole bullpen next year. But definitely 2 interesting pieces that the Orioles still have hope for. Neither of them are guys they're just going to kind of cast off this offseason. So there's at least that. But staying with that, this could have been Chris Davis too, of course, but he has retired. So I did want to ask about the one, just scanning the roster. I believe there is one of the former Orioles, now not a former Orioles major league player, but former Orioles minor leaguer. Jonah Heim has kind of made somewhat of a name for himself with the Rangers at times this year. He was Orioles prospect. They traded him to the Rays in 2016 for Steve Pearce at the deadline. And now he's with the Rangers, and at least for him, he's in the majors.
Yeah, the Rangers got him in the Elvis Andrus / Chris Davis trade, the other Chris Davis that very much did not work out.
And then he went back to the A's.
Yeah, and is still just about as bad there. Jonah Heim was always going to be the main piece in that deal. Really solid defensive catcher, a little bit of pop. Had a weekend, actually. I forget who was against, but it was like right after the deadline. He had back-to-back walk-off home runs, which that's like an all-time great moment. He got 9 home runs on the year. The offense hasn't quite been there. It's been real hit and miss, mostly miss. But solid defensive catcher, switch hitter, 26, probably going to be Rangers backup catcher for a little while. I had no idea that he was a former Oriole. But that's fun. And, I want to close this out on a very hopeful note. Give us a chance to talk about the next guy who just the top prospect, the guy who gives us the most hope, and what to expect from. Obviously, Adley Rutschman is your guy. When can we expect to start seeing him in the big leagues, and what is your hope for him long term?
Well, he's ready right now. I mean, if the Orioles wanted to bring him up right now, he would be one of the best players on the team. Like, he came up to AAA halfway through the season and just mashed AAA pitching. He's been fantastic. He is truly the number one prospect in baseball. He should be up for opening day and be the starting catcher for the Orioles next year. There's no catchers ahead of him blocking him at all. He's good enough to be in the big leagues right now. If the service time rules are the same, we're going to have to wait 3 weeks or whatever it is before we see him, or potentially more if the Orioles really want to hold him back. And I want to get really, really pissed off on the Locked On Orioles podcast. But he's good. He's really good. He hits really well from both sides of the plate. He's a fantastic defensive catcher, but it doesn't take anything away from his offense, which I think puts him at kind of a next level. And, the way people describe him is, I've heard scouts say this, and this is the way I like to kind of, piggyback off of what they say. He's not a good hitting catcher. There's a lot of prospects in the past that have been like really good hitting catchers. Matt Wieters for the Orioles was one of those guys. They're like, look at this catcher, and he can hit. That's why we took him in the top 10. No, Adley Rutschman is a fantastic hitter who happens to be a really good catcher. And it's a very different distinction. He's like, a bust for him would be he plays out his time with the Orioles for 7 years as a starter and is just kind of a solid catcher. Like, that seems like to be the floor. And the ceiling is like multi-time all-star, helping the Orioles win games again.
Oh, gosh. Oh, that sounds really nice. At this point, I think who's listed as a Rangers top prospect is Jack Leiter. And as much as I love him, I just don't trust any pitching prospects a little bit because the guy that we talked about earlier, Dylan Tate. But Josh Jung, for me, is the Rangers' top prospect. He's a former Texas Tech guy, so obviously already loved him. Like, I got to watch him quite a bit. He was there as a freshman when I was still at Tech. Really solid hitter. The only question about him, really advanced, really polished. Like, literally from the time he was 18, I was like watching this guy. I'm like, okay, this guy really knows what he's doing up there as a freshman in college, and that is some impressive stuff. There are questions about his power. He has absolutely just debunked all of those questions. He's only played in 69 games this year, which, while that's very nice, he's hit 16 home runs. Foot injury delayed the start of his season. Otherwise, I think he might be up right now. That's kind of why the Rangers went with Brock Holt / Charlie Culberson, splitting time at third base this year, because they knew, or they had a feeling that Josh Jung would be up at some point this year. I don't know that he's going to see the big leagues this year, but I'd be very shocked if he isn't the Rangers' everyday starting third baseman beginning next year. He's a guy who I think will be, solid enough defensively at third base, above average hitter with potential to be really good. He's a guy who's got great makeup, loves baseball, works incredibly hard, and, keeps being a little bit better than everyone thinks he is. And those guys are the guys who I can't help but get really excited about, kind of like a Paul Goldschmidt, not like necessarily I think he's got MVP potential, but like a guy who at every single level just outworked the predictions. And because he loved baseball, he's a smart kid, good kid, and loved the grind. That just made them better than people thought they could. So I'm really excited about Josh Jung. Jack Leiter, we'll see him some point next season in the minor leagues, not pitching the rest of this year, going back to Vanderbilt to go be a millionaire who also goes to college, and it's going to work out with some former Vandy guys this offseason. So definitely some bright future for both of our teams. Adley Rutschman, I'm very happy for you. Orioles fans deserve that hope. I hope that he lives up to every bit of what you expect him to. And, I'm hoping the same for Josh Jung as well.
It's fun to have prospects. It's going to be more fun when they're in the big leagues. That's all I got to say about that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Where can the fine listeners of Locked On Rangers find you and your show, Connor?
Well, if you're watching it on YouTube, right here at the bottom, at Connor Newcomb _ on Twitter, at Locked On Orioles on Twitter as well. And you can listen to the podcast wherever you listen to Locked On Rangers 5 days a week, right into the ears every morning at posted around 5 a.m. So if you're an early bird, you can get up and listen to some Orioles coverage. I'm not up that early. It's scheduled for them, but then you can listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you Locked On Orioles listeners, you can find me on Twitter at Brice Paterik. You can now find the show on YouTube, and I'm sure eventually you'll find Locked On Orioles on YouTube. So if you want to watch our smiling faces talk about this, just search Locked On Rangers on YouTube. Find the one where we're talking about baseball, not the one they're talking about hockey. A fine podcast, but maybe for a different listener. Thank you for making Locked On Rangers or Locked On Orioles your first listen of every day. Make sure to make the Locked On Bets your second listen of the day. But that's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rangers. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.